Morning, everyone. Advocacy is headed here in a word that is multi-common these days. First, symptom evolve over time, change. You know, as you all know, I'm sure some of these trees don't even shed their fire. With the fires, we also know they've gotten worse in the last 50 to 100 years. Climate change is real. This year we had record snowfall, and I've been keeping an eye on the snowfall because it affects what kind of gear you're going to hike on the PCT, depending on what kind of snow you're going to look at. And we had a lot of extra snow, but by July, early July, we'd already dipped below even the average of what was on the trail, which means we had a whole lot of snow, but it went away really quickly because of the heat. Advocacy is working upstream. It's not working after the flood. It's working to build a better dam. Advocacy is directed to those in power to change things, to change the way things are so that we don't suffer, so that people don't suffer. That's a good way of thinking the difference kind of between advocacy and service. Advocacy is directed to those with power. Service is directed to those who have no power. And there are some ways of doing service that can advocate for others and vice versa. But today we want to focus on making the world a better place, of changing the world, of using the structures, of changing the structures by which we make decisions, by which we distribute resources and economic and social power, so that the world can become more like the kingdom of God. Until next time, God be with you.
Well, that was a perfect place. Oops. Sorry, I'm so short. Can you hear me? That was a perfect place where Brennan was, because the other day for our meaningful movie the other night, we showed the movie The West is on Fire. And if you haven't seen that, it's just a 55-minute documentary. PBS carries it, and it really brings a lot of hope to the disasters we are having. So I would love you guys to take a look at that. All you have to do is Google "The West is on Fire" and you'll be able to see that. Okay. My mom must have known how much I wanted to affect our world as I was leaving home and heading off to college, because her words of wisdom to me were, "The best way to change the world, honey, is by one person at a time." She was right, of course, no matter how much I wanted to make the world better as fast as I could. Yet my dad was also an inspiration to me, as my mom was a quiet advocate, making change in her calm and peaceful way. My dad was much more active and boisterous. I obviously had a part of him in me too, and my mom knew that. In college, I did become very active in many causes, but I always felt God with me as I used the gifts He gave to me to make a positive difference. Then after Ben and I were married, we agreed that I should be a full-time mother of our 5 wonderful children that we were given. Still, I needed to be involved and help others in any way I could. Both of us always kept God in the picture, and with every decision we made. Later, when our children were all in school, I decided that being a substitute teacher would allow me to have the flexibility to continue being the mom I needed to be while still helping others. Every step I have taken in life, every path I have followed, God's guidance was at the forefront. Even when I strayed, I felt him bringing me back to what was most important, for him to use me in ways that not only served him, but made me feel valued at the same time. I remember people asking me, "Are you a Christian?" after just a short time of knowing me, and I was always proud to tell them, "Well, yes, but it's been easy for me to be God's servant because I had two wonderful role models growing up. Even today, 7 of my siblings and I begin each day on a conference call reading the daily passage from God Calling, a book given to us from our parents, and then we share what our day will be like. It's a special connection we have with each other. I've learned over the years that each one of us has been given special gifts to share in God's wondrous world. Some give their time, some give their talent, and others have treasure to give. Every day I step out of bed, I say this prayer: Lord, take me where you want me to go. Let me meet who you want me to meet. Tell me what you want me to say, and keep me out of your way. Yeah, it's a good one. My dad passed on a number of prayer cards to his family and friends after my mom died. It was his way of keeping her spirit alive. And another one of my favorites is entitled, "Be the Force to Change the World." It was one of the last prayer cards he gave to us, and he had 3,000 of them made. I asked him why so many, and he told me that he wanted us to spread them to everyone we knew, that the message was too important, especially in today's world. And this one says, "Remember, no prayer goes unanswered. Understand that from adversity comes goodness. What is wrong in your country, its leaders, its laws, its people? Think of these and pray. You will see lives you've never touched altered, laws made that will turn evil to good. You may never go beyond one room, and yet your prayer may become the most powerful force for good in your country, in your world." And I have some of these to pass on if you'd like.
Hi, I'm Cindy Storm, and I want to talk to you about advocacy. What is an advocate? Well, like most things these days, I turn to Google. And it says, to offer support to those who feel they are not being heard, to ensure they are taken seriously and that their rights are being respected. I am not one to believe that everyone can do any job. We all have our strengths and weaknesses. I do think that if you find something that you're passionate about, you can be an advocate. It takes dedication, perseverance, and compassion. I work for CASA. We train volunteers to become court-appointed special advocates for children who are in foster care who have been abused and neglected. We have found that children who have a CASA are more likely to find a safe and permanent home and are more likely to do well in school. Being an advocate can be a very rewarding, and helping someone better their situation is good for your soul. I am told many times by people that they couldn't do what I do. We take our life experiences, good and bad, and mold our beliefs and passions. We do what we can. Thank you.
My name's Rick Meyer. Normally when I talk to people, I say my name is Rick. I'm a recovering addict alcoholic. When Susan asked me to talk about advocacy and about the people that I advocate for, I said no. I spend a lot of time around each of you. I know that you believe that justice and advocating for people is for those who are the victims. My people are not the victims. My people are the guilty. My people are those who have committed the crime against others. I advocate by going to prisons and jails and talking with administrations and trying to get them to allow us to bring 12-step meetings, Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, into the jails for the inmates. I talk to 150 people and say, how many of you were sober when you committed the crime that you're convicted of, the crime that you're in here for against another human? How many of you were clean and sober, free from drugs and alcohol? And there are no hands up. So my advocacy is to say to them, let's get the drugs and alcohol out of your life and see if you can stay out of this place. See if you can become a feeling, caring human being instead of an abuser. I work with the homeless vets that are on the street with drug and alcohol issues. They struggle to try and get benefits from the VA. And the reason that they struggle is because they did something and they got discharged from the military service with something other than an honorable degree. When that happens to them, they have no benefits. Recently, because of people petitioning the VA about people who were discharged with a dishonorable discharge, they have put a new program in place to say, you know, this person spent 4 years in the military and they ended up with a dishonorable discharge. But for 3 years of their service, they had honorable service. So last November, the VA put a program in place where people could submit the paperwork to try and get partial benefits for the honorable time that they did have before they ended up with a dishonorable discharge. So I go to veterans groups in the prisons with that paperwork and teach them how to submit the paperwork to get partial benefits, anything to help them so that when they get discharged when they get released from prison, they don't just end up homeless on the streets with drug and alcohol issues. Before the pandemic, I spent a couple of years petitioning Oregon State Penitentiary to allow me to take Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous meetings onto death row. I put a plan in place. I told them how I would do that to be able to go on to death row and talk to the people who are there about drug and alcohol issues. Those who, again, were not clean and sober when they committed the crime that they're there for. I kept pestering my supervisor, and she would say, you have to submit this, you have to put it in writing. So I put it in writing. Nothing would happen. So finally, after about 2 years, I got a meeting with the assistant warden. And she was very kind, face to face. We sat and talked, and I told her about the plan that I had and what the need was for people who have crimes because of drug and alcohol issues. And she said, I understand what you're saying. I just don't know how I would tell the families of the victims that we're doing something to help this person who murdered their loved one, that we're doing something to help them find peace. She said, I can't explain that to the victims, so I'm going to turn down your request. I work for an agency in town that does criminal justice. You know, they help people who have been victims, who are victims. And they told me, they said, we support what you're doing. We understand what you're doing, but don't bring any of your people into this office. So when it comes to justice and advocacy, I believe that the leopard can change its stripes, its spots, that the tiger can change its stripes. And that belief, I pray to the Lord each morning and asks, you know, what should I do? And the answer has been, go into the prisons and jails and tell them, I know how to get out of here and I know how to stay out of here. Thanks. My name's Rick Meyer.